In today's episode of Call Her Daring, we're finishing out the season with a Q&A session with guest host Rebecca Jones. She is asking all the questions you want answers to and then some. Let's get into it. Okay, so this is our season finale of the Call Her Daring podcast, and I think it'll be our 11th episode. So I'm really happy with the first season. I think 11 episodes was actually a lot for me, so I'm happy to have a break. But I'm also excited for next season and I'm excited to take a break because it does give me a chance to prepare for next season and think about all the topics I want to cover and research those topics. So I hope everybody enjoyed the first season, and I hope everybody joins us for season 2. Not sure when it's gonna launch, but it will come.
Stay tuned. Stay tuned.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so we're gonna do a Q&A session for this final episode. I mentioned on my TikTok that I am not great at talking about myself, but I am okay at answering very direct, specific questions. So I figured a Q&A session would be the best way to do that. And that way, if you're a Call Her Daring listener, then you can learn a little bit more about me. So I've seen the questions, but I haven't pre-planned any answers. So I'm going to be winging it.
Excellent. And some of these are from your TikTok commenters, right? So you would ask them to give you some ideas for questions, and then I threw a couple of extra questions in there too, so we can just kind of get to know you a little bit more.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. Sounds good.
All right. So first question that I have for you was, what was your major in college? Because I know the background of you, but I would love for everybody to understand where you're coming from.
I majored in interior design, and I love design. I love design in all areas: graphic, fashion, interior, you name it. Anything beautiful, anything that inspires, anything that makes you feel something. I love it. So interior design was the path for me. And of course, now I do nothing that has to do with interior design.
No, that's not true. Your house is beautiful. I've seen pictures. We've done a couple of videos on your beautiful house, and you had a huge hand, I'm sure, in designing all of the aspects of it. So yeah,
That is true.
yeah. So
That is true.
work-wise, maybe not so much, but absolutely.
Exactly.
Question number 2 that I have for you is, how did you choose your partner, and how did you make sure that he respected your stance on parenthood? I'm sure that you had conversations about this before you guys got super serious.
First of all, my husband's name is Rich, and I interrogated Rich for a year. Any date that we went on, anytime we spent, I just asked him questions constantly, and I was really trying to gauge, and I'm not great at talking about myself, so it's perfect. I ask a lot of questions because A, I don't want to talk about myself. B, I want to know a lot about the person that I'm dating. So I asked a ton of questions to get to know him. But as far as the kids go, he already had 3 daughters, and he had been snipped. He had a vasectomy. So I didn't really have to worry about my desire to be biologically child free. I didn't really have to worry about him respecting that because he wasn't able to have any more kids. So it actually worked out quite well in that regard.
Yeah. So then I imagine that the conversation was easy in terms of future children. You didn't really have to make a decision on that. It was already kind of decided and go with the flow.
Exactly. Yeah. And we met, I'm 40, I'm almost 46. But we met when I was about 33. And at that point, there was still 10% of me that wasn't sure if I wanted kids or not. I knew 90%, I'm 90% sure I don't want kids, but there was still a little sliver of me that thought I might want them. And so we did have that discussion about whether or not he'd be willing to get his vasectomy reversed. And he said that he would not. And I respected that. And I knew that with 90% of me really feeling quite confident that I didn't want kids, then that was fine. I wasn't going to end the relationship over a 10% chance that I might want kids. So, yeah.
And then how did the conversation go when you found out that he had kids and you would be a stepmom if it went that path?
I knew he had kids from the moment I met him. I think he told me that we met, I was selling office furniture, like cubicles and desk chairs and things like that.
Which sounds so glamorous, by the way.
I know, yes, totally. And so he called the company that I work for. He needed some new cubicles, and I got the job. The project was assigned to me, and so I met with him. And he, within like the first 10 minutes, he mentioned that he had recently split from his wife and needed an interior designer for his new rental house that he was sharing with his 3 kids. So I knew within like 10 minutes that this guy had kids. So it wasn't like a, something that came to light or something I didn't know for a while. Like I knew immediately.
Yeah, that's good that it wasn't like a surprise.
Mm.
Yeah. Do you have any regrets in your life? Like, do you have any regrets for anything that transpired in terms of your relationship?
So I'm really careful with regret. I like to think that if I could do it all over again, I might make some different choices. But whenever I think about that, I know that I wouldn't be where I am here today if anything was different. So I I don't feel a lot of regret because I appreciate where I am. And I know that every step that I took, every decision that I make led me to where I am now. And I'm happy now. And so feeling regret to me, I don't feel a lot of regret. I feel appreciation for all the steps and all the mistakes and all the errors that I've made because it all brought me here. And I'm very happy where I am. So
Nice.
there's not a lot of regret in my life.
That's good.
It is
I
good.
I I think that a lot of women probably aspire to be that way. And it's good to hear that you don't have that many regrets. It's good.
No. And I've made lots of mistakes. I don't want it to sound like I'm perfect
Mhm.
and I've done nothing wrong. I've made lots of mistakes, but I still think everything happens for a reason. And it's all building blocks. It's all learning
Mhm.
opportunities. And like I said, it brings us to where we are now. And if you're happy with where you are now, then there's really nothing to regret.
And it is important to make mistakes. It is important because we get to
Exactly.
learn from those. Do you have because like your topics on TikTok and a lot of the content that we've created for the podcast is about, child free and making those choices. Do you have other child free women in your life, like your friends or other family members? And like, do you guys have conversations about this? Have you talked to them about how they feel about it, and have they seen your content?
Yes. I'd say 50, my friends and family are like 50-50. I've got like 50% of them are child free by choice and 50% have children. And I talk about these topics with both. With my child free friends, we talk about why we are child free, why we've made that decision, the benefits, how we're enjoying it. And by the way, none of them have any regrets about being child free. And then with my friends and family that do have kids, we most often talk about their regret or lack thereof. And usually it's a case of I don't feel regret, but I wish I knew more. I wish I had known more about being a mother and having children before I jumped in. So that's typically what my conversations with my friends who have kids look like.
How do they react to your content? Do they love it? Are they like avid followers?
I think I don't know the answer to that. Yes, they watch it, they enjoy it, but I don't know if they would be 100% honest about how they feel about it or not. So I'm not sure how they feel.
It's hard. It's hard. It's hard. This is a hard space because, we're just starting to have this conversation. We're just starting to like open up, and I think it's hard for people to admit how they feel about certain things. So yeah.
Like,
So,
so yeah, I think that is an issue. Is it kind of opens the door
mhm,
to feelings that maybe they've repressed, that they
yeah,
don't want to feel, that they don't want to think
mhm,
about, and I think that can be a challenge.
yeah. I don't want to feel ashamed, because
Yeah,
that's what society does is they make us feel shameful for having any kind of negative feelings about anything. So,
about your kids. Yeah,
yeah, yeah,
exactly.
yeah. Since you are child free, was it a tough transition to becoming a stepmom, or was that relatively easier because the kids were like a little bit older, I imagine?
Yes, it was tough. So
Mhm.
they were, I think, yeah, they were 11, ages 11 to just turning 6 when I met them. And I didn't meet them until Rich and I dated for a year before I met the kids. We wanted to make sure that you know, I was going to stick around. He was going to stick around. We didn't want to introduce them to me on a whim. So we were very careful. Coming from a life, I live out in California. I don't have any family near me. And at that point, none of my friends had kids or they had very young children, like babies. I had not spent that much time around kids ages 6 to 11, and it was a lot. So I can get like I can get sensory overload. And when there's three little girls like all talking at the same time, it's like I could, there were times I'm like, I can't cope. I need quiet. It was just too much sometimes. And yeah, it definitely took me a little while just to get used to like all the noise and all the action
Hmm.
and having to juggle, like divide your attention very rapidly between three young people constantly. And at that young age, like they still like wanted to hang out with Rich and me. Like they wanted to be with us all the time. So there weren't a lot of breaks. And it was completely different from going from single with no kids, my time is mine. There's never any noise unless I'm playing music to full on three kids all the time, all over. Like so yes, there was definitely an adjustment period that took me quite a while. But I got there.
We call it like, I'm sure that this term is very widely known by your audience, but that's touched out. Like you'd be touched out all the time. I know it well.
Yes, I think every mother knows that well.
Hmm. Touched out, but that's like that term also applies to like just the noise. Like it's just
Yes.
there's too much in that. I would always say that I'm touched out even if it was just noise and nobody was touching me. So I totally understand that. And 6 to 11, that's like a very short age range for, and you said there were three girls, right?
Yep.
So yeah, and then I can imagine that as they got a little bit older into their teens, that was also pretty hard to handle.
Yeah, I mean the teenagers are challenging.
Hmm.
But they're great girls. They always were. They were as young kids. They are now as young women. So that definitely made it easier.
Hmm.
Uh, but yeah, going from single no kids to three kids, even just the act of making dinner for
Hmm.
for just me versus three kids and Rich and all of us doing it together, it was just such a huge difference. So
Yeah.
yeah, definitely an adjustment period.
Do you think that you've had a really impactful, a positive impact on their lives as they've grown up with you around somebody to look up to in terms of like always questioning, authority, the patriarchy, all of those things?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I brought a different and new element to their lives and um, just, more positive influences are better. Their mom is a huge influence in their life. She's a great influence. Their dad is as well. And so getting, it really is like they call the stepmom the bonus mom. And it really is a bonus. You get that one extra person to have this positive influence in your life. And yeah, for sure. Yeah, I'm very strong-willed. I built a business that I started as their stepmom, so they got to see all that. They helped me with the business. So yeah, I think absolutely they have seen things in me that they wouldn't have been exposed to otherwise. So absolutely.
I think I've seen pictures of one of them helping you sew the first bagnet.
Yeah, yeah, that was Tori. She would sit in my office and she would like do her homework or play while I sewed bag nets because I used to sew them by hand, thousands of them. And yeah, she was like my little shadow. She was always around. So yeah, she hung
Very
out with
cool.
me. And then once we were shipping tons of them out of our garage, the kids would help when I would get just completely overloaded with orders. The kids would help me package and ship bag nets.
So speaking of magnets, so what prompted you to start your business, the Bagnet Company?
I got so tired of going into public restrooms without purse hooks. And for years, I said, when is somebody going to solve this problem? This is so annoying. I have nowhere to put my bag. The hook is ripped out or it was never installed in the first place. I won't put my bag on the floor. So now I've got to like balance it in my lap while I go to the bathroom and wipe and pull up my pants. Yeah. And actually, it was Rich that one day he was like, Kel, why don't you just I was like, I can do this. I can solve this problem. And then I talked about solving the problem for a good 6 months before Rich was like, hell, why don't you just make one, make the prototype? I'm like, oh yeah, I should do that. Okay,
Hmm.
yeah, I'm gonna make the prototype. And so that's what kicked it off. I had like we all had this problem of missing hooks in restrooms, and I just got so fed up that I'm like, I'm gonna solve this problem right now.
So like from the point of prototype, what gave you the confidence to like leap into entrepreneurship? How did like starting your business, that's gotta be so scary.
It is, and it was. However, I was so excited and I was so sure that I had a good product that I just did it. This is, I think, good advice for anybody who wants to start a business or has a product idea, if they want to leap into entrepreneurship, just take the first step. That's all you have to do. Like, think, what is the first step I have to take? And that, don't think any further. Like, what is step number one? And for me, that was sketching my design ideas, sketching what I thought a bagnet would look like. And after you take that very first step, then you can take the next step and don't think any further than the next step. You think one step ahead. And after I sketched Bagnet, I thought, okay, I need to make a prototype because I need to actually test this and see if it works before I go any further. And so I got a piece of fake leather from my office and I threw a couple of really strong magnets in the middle, stitched it up, and put a hook on it and slapped it on my purse. And I carried it around for a couple of weeks and I was like, okay, it works. All right, what's the next step? So it didn't take like this huge amount of confidence because all I was doing was one step each time. Like, what's the next one step? Doesn't take that much confidence, really. You're just thinking one step ahead instead doing that step and then doing the next step. So I really like it doesn't take this monumental like belief. Yes, I believed in myself. Yes, I believed in the product, but it was just like a series of next steps.
I think that's the scariest part is like because you think that it's this huge thing that you have to think through every single step in order to move forward and like you have to have it all figured out from the very beginning. But I think that's really valuable advice that it doesn't have to be that way. You can just literally just take one step.
Exactly. And it's so overwhelming
Hmm.
if you think about the next year or two, but I want it to be this and how do I get it to that? You don't think about that. Like
Hmm.
that's overwhelming. And that's I think why people don't start at all is because you think about this big whole overwhelming picture and it's too overwhelming to start. You can't think that. You just think
Yeah.
about like one step. That's it.
So what do you enjoy the most about owning your own business?
With my business, what I enjoy the most is the opportunity to be creative a lot in product design, in marketing, even in business decisions. Everything I do, I think I am able to be really creative with. And I think that's the best part. I think that's what I enjoy the most because, like, I went into college to go into interior design, which is a highly creative field. And then when I quit my job to do Bagnet full time, it still filled my creative cup. I didn't have to like cut that part of myself off to own and run a business. I could still be creative in pretty much every avenue. So I think that's the best, my favorite part.
On the flip side of that, what's the thing that you enjoy the least about owning your own business?
Probably it's very stressful. It
Mhm.
is extremely stressful. Just running the business and being the one that has to pay the bills, that has to pay the vendors, that has to order all the products. Our Bagnet in specifically Bagnet as a company, we do over 50% of our annual sales in the last 2 months of the year, and that's because it makes such a good gift. But it's which that's what makes it so stressful financially is I have to order all that product, and it's a lot of products in the months leading up to Christmas. And so I'm just spending an insane amount of money and the sales don't happen until months later. And
Mhm.
so that it's extremely stressful. And I knew it would be. I knew when I left in that it would be stressful. I don't think I realized exactly how stressful. So
Yeah.
that's my least favorite part
Yeah.
for
I
sure.
know I often think about how it is to be responsible for like other people and their livelihood, especially being somebody that's an employer, that would be something that would stress me out a lot.
Yes, exactly. It feels great to give people jobs and help them put food on the table, but then conversely, it feels absolutely horrible to have to let people go when business isn't doing as well. So, yeah, there's a high-low factor
Hmm.
with having employees.
And being in business for so long, I mean, it's like, mountains and valleys where you're
Exactly.
trying to figure everything out and feast or famine. And I think that's across a lot of industries. So I don't think that you're alone.
I don't think so either. And COVID threw us all for a loop.
Hmm.
That was a major blip where just nothing was normal. And anything that you had come to expect, you couldn't expect anymore. So
Yeah.
that was an added challenge for sure.
Yeah. All your reliabilities were no longer reliable. Hmm. Yeah.
Exactly.
So what was your biggest failure and what did you learn from that experience?
I don't know what my biggest failure has been. I've had many, many failures. Business wise, like as far as like product line, I'd say our kids' magnets was a huge
Mm.
failure. I thought that obviously I wouldn't have launched a kids collection if I didn't think it would do well, but it did really, really bad. As far as business goes, I'd say the kids' line of magnets was my biggest failure.
That's
I
wild. That's
It
wild.
is wild. I thought they would do so well. They're so cute,
Like
and
you think of like lockers and like all the things that kids, I mean, there's so many magnetic accessories for things like just lockers, but
yeah,
backpacks and holding everything up, that's crazy.
I
That's
know.
crazy.
I was shocked. It was so disappointing. That's definitely my biggest business failure.
Call Her Daring is sponsored by Bagnet Company. I founded Bagnet Company in 2015, and since then, I've made it my mission to create useful accessories that not only make your life easier, they add a little sparkle to your everyday. The best pleasures in life are the little things that you love using because they bring a smile to your face and serve a purpose. That's why Bagnet Company is a no-brainer for women who know they deserve to have it all. Easier, better, more beautiful. It's not a tagline, it's a life mantra.
Like as you've been working through Bagnet, I mean, you've been in business with Bagnet for since 2015, is that right?
Yep, I filed the patent in at the end of 2014. So yeah,
Yeah.
2000.
That's awesome. So
I know.
you've created this huge empire, I will say, of magnetic purse accessories, and then have slowly expanded to other avenues. And this year we launched this podcast, which was something that we had a couple conversations about. And in the introduction to this podcast, kind of like get a little bit more information as to why you started it. What is the story behind the podcast, and how does it relate to your company and kind of an expansion of that, or is it not?
Yeah, it definitely relates. And I wanted to do the podcast because I was doing these TikTok videos about regretful moms and about regretful wives and child free by choice women who were living their best lives. And I thought it would be so nice to have a forum where I could tell these stories in greater depth and in greater detail, and maybe even talk to some of these women and um, be able to have nuanced conversations. And it fit in really well with Bagnet Company because Bagnet Company is for women by women. We make, products that are only for women. They're made to make women's lives easier. So it just seemed like such a natural blend to create this podcast that talks about women's experiences and really highlights it's about being radically honest about being the female experience. And I thought that meshed so well with just the company and our mission product wise that I thought it was a no brainer. Like, yeah, I should absolutely do this. And then, oh, and then the Call Her Daring name I thought was perfect because it's got two meanings. Obviously, it's my last name, so call me Daring. But I wanted women to be able to see themselves as daring and call themselves daring. And the way that we could do that is to tell their stories, and so we could all see like this is how daring all these women are. They're daring to do all these things, and so we're gonna call her daring as well.
Yeah, it's really I love that your last name is Daring. That's so
Isn't it wild?
it's such a cool name.
It's pretty rare. Yeah. Yeah, I know. I got married. I've been married twice. I'm on my second marriage, and I changed my last name the first time I got married, and I was never comfortable with it. It never sat right with me. I never felt like that last name fit me. It was Edwards. My last name was Edwards when I married
Mhm.
the first time, and I just never felt right. I never felt comfortable. I'm like, it's not who I am. That's not me. I'm not Edwards. And so the second time that I switched it back after I got divorced, and the second time I married, I was like, sorry, Rich, but I don't want to change my name. I am daring to the core. I am
Mhm.
daring. And he was understanding, of course. So
Yeah,
yeah,
Kelly Edwards just did not roll off the tongue like
doesn't
Kelly.
have the ring. No.
Mhm. No. The podcast is a little bit of like an extension of your TikTok page. And you kind of stumbled upon the Regretful Parent series by the first post that you did about why you're child free by choice. Why do you think the specific topic of women's regret is fascinating to you, but also is like really engaging for your audience?
It's fascinating to me because in my 20s, I went looking for validation of my feelings regarding kids. And what I saw was like women's struggles and how it looked so much harder than anybody was willing to admit. And I went looking for proof of it. And I found it online in stories of parental regret, mostly on Reddit. And once I found it, I was like, yes, I feel validated. I knew it. I knew it. I knew what I was seeing. I wasn't crazy, even though nobody will admit it out loud. Nobody will say the quiet part out loud. I went looking for proof and I found it. And then when TikTok came around and I started seeing these conversations had on TikTok by women about being child free, about being parents, I thought, this would actually be a great forum to start bringing some of this stuff to light. Some of this stuff that I noticed for years, finally got validation, but I don't know if anybody else has ever been validated on this. So I'm going to start to share it and just see if it resonates. And lo and behold, it did.
And it has resonated very loudly. Very
Yes,
loudly.
exactly. Yeah, we're just so discouraged from telling our truths and from admitting anything other than just pure joy and happiness in motherhood.
Mm-hmm. And in all other aspects of our life. I mean, as women, we're just expected to like everything and
Yeah,
be like all sunshine and rainbows. But like the minute that you don't have that feeling or you might feel a different way, even internally, I think we're just like, are we allowed to feel this way?
yeah,
And I think that your TikTok has really helped a lot of women like realize that, oh yeah, it's okay. It's okay to feel this way because others do too.
exactly. And not feel so discouraged from saying, hey, I'm not happy. Hey, this doesn't make me happy. Not be discouraged from bitching about, like, you can
Hmm.
bitch. It's okay to bitch about something, but we're told to just shut up, accept it, be grateful. Just be grateful for what you have.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
you know,
The amount of times that I've been told that I should be grateful for a lot of things is like, shush you.
yeah, yeah, I can have any feeling I want, and
Yeah.
that's valid. I don't have to be grateful all the time.
So the stories that you tell that you read on your TikTok page, where do you get those stories from? The regretful parents, the regretful wives, and the child free by choice stories. Where do you get those from?
Yeah, somebody recently asked this on a TikTok. They commented, "Where are you so conveniently getting these stories from?" So clearly, at least one person doesn't believe that these stories are actually being sent to me, but they are. I have received hundreds, maybe thousands of direct messages through TikTok. My email is in my link in bio, so I receive emails, and then I've also got an anonymous story submission form in my link in bio as well. And so that's actually what gets the most submissions. And yeah, it's hundreds, maybe thousands at this point because they're all scattered. I don't know the total number, but yeah, people submit their stories to me every single day. Like I could never catch up reading all these stories. So yeah, they're sent to me, and I think I've developed the trust necessary from people seeing me read, many of these stories and not revealing their identity and being very respectful with their stories that people continue to feel comfortable sending in their stories.
Do you ever think that you'd write a book about it?
Ooh, I would love to write a book, and I don't know if it would be on that topic, but yeah, writing a book is definitely a possibility. I love writing. I love reading. I wanted to be when I was a kid, I wanted to be a writer. I actually tried writing books when I was a child, and so that's definitely a possibility. Probably not anytime soon.
It's another creative outlet, but also even just compiling these stories into a book might be
Yeah,
really interesting because then it's a little bit private too. You know, when you're reading a book, not everybody can be in your head at that time where you're reading whatever's on the page. So, you know, I've come across a lot of those types of books where it's just compilations of different people's stories, and I always find them so fascinating. I think there's a market out there for just compilations of women's stories and women's regret of like all of these other aspects of motherhood that I'm pretty sure there
absolutely.
are.
Couldn't agree more. I think it's a
Mhm.
great idea. Yeah, I would love to compile stories, and I'd love to dig a little bit deeper on each of those stories and interview those women and add, added commentary to the book.
That would be
And
very cool.
yeah, so maybe, yeah, maybe someday soon. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how things go.
So you've got your products, you started TikTok, and now we've started this podcast. It's kind of like this extension of your company. So what do you think is next for your company?
I saw this question on here and I thought, I don't know the answer to that. I don't know. I've got my hands full, that's for sure, with Bagnet Company and this podcast, and then just life, obviously. I'm pretty busy right now. I do think a book would be really fun. I might just focus on creating a couple new products for Bagnet Company right now. Like this year, we're going to have our first ever Christmas collection of Bagnets. Next year, we'll do a spring summer launch collection of Bagnets. I think I want to create variation of the city sling that's a little bit bigger and maybe in a different material. So for right now, I'm kind of focused on product design, but big picture, the honest answer is I don't know, and that's okay. I don't need to have the big picture. I don't need to have like the grandest vision. I'm okay, like kind of chilling and sitting back and letting inspiration come. Because I found when I try to force it, I just burn out and I get stressed out. So sometimes
Yeah,
I'm okay just not knowing. I don't know what's next, and that's okay.
that's okay. Just kind of go with it.
Exactly.
So you just mentioned burnout, and I know that you've done a couple of videos on your experience with burnout. How has your perspective on mental health changed over time, including your experience with burnout and all of the things that go with it?
I never thought much about mental health years ago when I started the business and in the early years, and then I did get really burned out, and that is when I started to pay attention more to my mental health. And I worked myself pretty hard. I worked 12-hour days, 6 or 7 days a week. And in the early days, I had two jobs. I had my regular job, and I did Bagnet on top of it. But even after I quit that job, I worked at Bagnet 12 hours a day, 6 to 7 days a week, and I did it for years. And I was so excited and I was so happy. I was so fulfilled by what I was doing. I didn't realize that I was burning myself out. I was completely unaware. I just every day I woke up and I was excited and I was learning and I was doing shit I had never done before. And so I just went. I just went hard. But it backfired because I got to a point where I couldn't cope with even the smallest stressor. I just wanted to stop. I just wanted to crawl into bed and stay there for months. I couldn't cope with really anything. This really like came to a head in 2020 and 2021.
Well, with the added stress of COVID and everything, it
Exactly.
just kind of like bubbled it all to the top and then just burst.
Exactly. Yep. So I had to take a step back and really focus on my mental health, and I cut my hours in half. I went from, working over 60 hours a week to working 30 hours a week, and I started focusing on my health. The first thing I did was I stopped drinking, and that was huge for me. I had no idea how huge it would be at the time. I was just really tired of drinking. I was a daily drinker, 3 to 4 glasses of wine every night, and I drank like that for years. And I was so tired of it, and I knew it wasn't helping with the burnout situation, so I stopped drinking. And that's really like when everything shifted for me, and my mental health got much better, along with cutting my work hours in half, of course. So, yeah, so mental health for me has changed a lot. And in the years since then, that was in 2022, January 2022, I stopped drinking. And then a year later, I started to really get in shape. I had always lifted weights. I've lifted weights since I was in my early 20s. With the business, I obviously had way less time, so I wasn't as regimented with it as I should have been in more recent years. And so it would kind of fall by the wayside. But I got back into it in the beginning of 2023, a year after I stopped drinking. And I lifted weights 5 times a week without fail. I completely changed my diet, even though I ate healthy prior. I've talked about not eating fast food. I don't eat processed foods. I still improved my diet on top of that. I hired a nutrition coach. She upped my protein. We talked about macros, and we restricted some calories, and I lost about 20 pounds. And so all of this kind of came together over the last few years, but the catalyst was definitely being burnt out and not drinking. So
Yeah.
that's sorry for that very long answer.
No, it's good. You actually answered a bunch of other questions that I had on my list, which is great. And I think that would you say that the choosing not to drink alcohol was really just like committing to be fit and healthy? That is really something that helped that.
100%. I don't think I could have done it, continue to do it if I continued to drink. It is,
Mhm.
I had no idea when I quit how much it would change my life, how much it would change my perspective, how much it would change everything, just everything. And it brought up a lot of negative things that I had to deal with. It brought up a lot of past trauma. It brought up a lot about my childhood. It brought up a lot about like how without drinking every night, I kind of found myself a little bored and like I didn't know what to do with myself. So I had to find new hobbies and start filling my time in a different way. But it gave me more time to be creative. Like instead of drinking every night, I could do watercolor or sketch, which is a vast improvement. I'd much rather do watercolor than or sketch than drink.
Yeah.
But I had to go through all the hard steps to find that out. And I do want to be clear, I'm not 100% sober. I do drink on occasion, so I don't want to misrepresent myself. I drink probably once a month, once or twice a month, and it's typically when I travel.
Yeah.
But yeah, I went from being a daily drinker to drinking maybe once. So drastically reduced.
And so I'm also, so I would say not sober curious because I've been this way for about 4 years, but I just kind of gave up drinking as well. And it wasn't like I had a problem or anything. And I, just like you, I feel so much better. I feel clearer.
Yeah.
And I feel like I can focus and concentrate on life more and handle all of the things that get thrown at me. So, maybe the alcohol was an exacerbation of your burnout, and then it just made everything worse. And
Yeah.
then it's for anybody out there that's sober curious, I would say try it. There's like restaurants are getting so much better at it now, where they have like really fun mocktails on their
Yes.
menus. You can also like talk to bartenders and be like, just make me something fun to drink. And it's kind of that sociological, like psychological thing where you're sitting at a table with your friends and they all have maybe alcoholic drinks, but you have a non-alcoholic that looks like it. You can
Yeah.
still kind of like relax a bit.
Yeah,
So,
and you can participate. You feel like
mhm.
you're participating, and for me, it's not so much about what's in the drink, it's like the ritual of the drink or just feeling like I'm a part of what's happening at the table. I'm not going to feel that way if I have an iced tea, but if I've got this pretty sparkling wine or yeah, sparkling NA wine, then yeah, I just feel like I'm more part of what's going on. But without the buzz, which is great. And oh, that reminds me, Rich and I went out last week for our anniversary, and I ordered a non-alcoholic sparkling rosé, and it was amazing. Typically, I don't like NA wines because they're too sweet. They taste like grape juice. This sparkling rosé, I could not have told you that it didn't have alcohol in it. It was absolutely amazing, and it's Leet. I think it's Lietz. Think that's how you spell it. And it's a non-alcoholic sparkling rosé. And I think I ordered some on the Zero Proof, the zeroproof.com, I think. And it comes in, you can get it in a bottle or you can get it in the little cans, like the single serving cans, which I got because I don't want a whole bottle to lose its fizz. I'm probably not going to drink a whole bottle of non-alcoholic sparkling rosé, but so good. Highly recommend. This is not like I'm not sponsored. They're not paying me anything, but it was so good, and I was so surprised to find a sparkling wine, non-alcoholic sparkling wine that I actually liked that I am excited to share it with people. So if you don't drink, check out this sparkling wine. It's great.
I love that. I love getting like hints and tips like that because
Yeah.
I think that we talk about regretting parenthood or motherhood, and we talk about the other things that are uncomfortable. I think like maybe we're gatekeeping these little tidbits of like how to not drink poison every day, right? And still enjoy life. So
Yeah.
it's really fun. I'll add
Um,
it in the show notes. So for anybody
okay, good. Yes. Add the link. I'll send it
we're
to you.
going. Okay.
Um, I was going to ask you if when you stopped drinking, did like any stuff come up for you, like childhood stuff, trauma stuff, like anything that you had like just not dealt with because you were buzzed all the time or you were
Yeah.
drinking all the time. Like you couldn't deal with it because you just couldn't deal with it because you were drinking.
I wouldn't say that I had anything that came up for me, but I noticed everybody drinking more around me. And in my family, we have a very long history of alcoholics. And so, my one aunt, she's my cool aunt. She is sober because she had a problem. And so her and I have had a couple of conversations about how I'm alcohol free by choice. And she, it was almost like a non-choice for her. She had to because it was a problem.
Okay.
And so I wouldn't say necessarily that anything from my childhood came up with my dad. and he passed away a year and a half ago now, but he was a heavy drinker. His drink of choice was a Bacardi and Coke, and that man would go through like a case of handles of
Oh my
Bacardi
God.
a week, and it was just, but he was a functioning alcoholic, and so yeah, so when I made the decision, it wasn't really, it was because I really hated the hangovers.
Yeah. Yep.
And I didn't feel it, like every time I drank, I never felt good. And I was like, this is just, what is this? What are we doing here? So, but I, ever since then, have been able to handle a lot of trials and tribulations that have come after that, which I think if I were drinking, probably would not have handled them as well or
Yeah.
as efficiently. So might have to deal with them a little bit longer. So yeah, I would say being alcohol free is really just become more clear. Everything's become more clear. And
Yeah.
I encourage anybody to try it. Like, what do you got to lose?
Are you completely sober or do you drink on occasion?
I will have like a small glass of like whiskey if I'm really feeling in the mood. And that's like, or if we're like tasting things, or if, Josh brings or one of his friends bring over. But I will say, like, my husband used to drink a lot too, but since I went alcohol free for the most part, he also kind of stopped drinking, which is an interesting side effect of that. So the
Yeah.
people around me kind of picked up on that, and he's lost a bunch of weight, and like my skin's very clear. So I think it's had a lot of positive impacts on everybody around us. But to answer your question, I do occasionally partake depending on the situation, and I think like it's okay because I don't, but it takes a far less amount now
Yeah.
to even catch any kind of a buzz. Like 2 sips and I'm like, no, that's enough.
I'm
So
good. Yep.
mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, my tolerance is way low, and that's
Yeah.
okay. I'm good with
Yeah.
that.
Exactly. A couple of sips and you're done.
Yep. So on your health journey, you mentioned that you don't eat anything processed. So you and I've had a couple conversations about this, but what kind of breads do you make? You mentioned it in one of your TikToks, and I'm curious about this too.
Yeah, so I make a recipe out of Ken Forkish's book, Flour, Water, Salt, Yeast, and it's called Saturday White Bread. And I make it every single week from scratch. I definitely recommend getting the book. I could just share the recipe, but there's a lot of steps that you really need to understand, like how to do each step. Once you get it down, it's really easy. It does take all day, although it's not like active time all
Hmm.
day. But the bread is absolutely amazing. Like I cannot live without it. And my husband is like he can't live without it either. Every meal we have this bread. I mean, every time we eat dinner, we have this bread, and every time we're both like, "Oh my God, the bread's so good." We
So it's not a sourdough, right? But have you thought about sourdough?
I've tried sourdough and I had a starter and I was doing the whole sourdough thing and I liked it just a little bit less than this
Yeah.
bread.
Yeah.
So I didn't stick with it. Yeah. And it's a
And
little more involved. It takes a little bit more time, the sourdough does.
yeah,
So I just stuck with this bread that's for me really easy. I know all
yeah.
the steps. I can just do it without looking.
Sourdough's a bit of a commitment.
Yeah, it is. It's delicious, but yeah, I stuck with like what's easy and what we love.
Would you say that making bread is one of your hobbies?
I would, yeah. Yeah, I enjoy it and I do it every single week. So yeah, I guess
Mhm.
that qualifies.
Do you have any other hobbies?
Yes. I mentioned sketching and watercolor. I do like online classes for both of those. I'm
Oh,
not
that's
great at
cool.
Yeah, I'm not great at either. Mallory, I think no. No, I'm not good. But it doesn't matter. Rich is so nice. He's like, you should sell these. I'm like, no, we're not creating a business out of this. I'm not trying to make money off of this. This is just for
Yeah.
creative expression. This is just for me.
That's important because I feel like every time that a woman picks up a hobby, it's like, oh, you should sell this. You could make a business out of
Monetize
this.
it.
Like, why? Why can't I just do this to enjoy it? So I think that's really
Exactly.
important.
Exactly.
Cool.
Yeah. That's how I feel as well. Mallory Jean Art is the watercolor classes I do, and she's great. I love her content, so I recommend her. I also bought an inflatable kayak recently, and I've been loving going out. We go out like 5 in the morning and start the day. We're just out there for an hour, hour and a half, Rich actually doesn't have one. He walks. He's getting his steps while I'm kayaking, and so I'm just out on the water by myself at 5:30, 6 in the morning, and it's so peaceful, and it's just the loveliest way to like start a day. And then I come home and work and do all the things, but to start my day like that is it's so just centering. I feel calm and centered and good. So that's definitely a newer hobby. I garden. I have herbs and tomatoes that I love to grow. Thankfully, I'm in Sacramento and our growing season is so long. So I've got that going for many months of the year. What else? Reading, of course. Love to read and design, interior design. I'll rearrange little areas of my house just for fun, counterscape or redo my shelves in the den. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I love to snowboard, but we haven't gone snowboarding in quite a while. I'm hoping to pick that up again pretty soon.
That's a pretty intense sport.
It is, but it's so fun. It's so Oh, and then the weightlifting. Sorry, how could I forget that the thing I do like 4 to 5 times a week.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I
weightlifting.
would say that's a hobby, right?
Yeah,
Like,
I think
and it's
so.
something that you enjoy. I love lifting weights. I feel so powerful when I can, hit a new PR. I think that's
Yeah.
hmm
Is so accomplished.
hmm So you mentioned that you're in Sacramento. Why did you choose Sacramento?
I grew up in upstate New York in a pretty small town, and I just wanted to kind of escape the small town. At that time there wasn't a lot of diversity, and I felt that there were limited opportunities. I feel different now as an adult. I actually really miss where I grew up, and I plan on spending a lot more time there in the near future. But I wanted to get out. This was when I was, 20 years old. And so my best friend and I picked Sacramento. We wanted to move to California. We knew that. We wanted the opportunity. We wanted the weather. We hated the snow. And we both wanted to go to college out in Sacramento. And we picked Sacramento because it was really the only place in California that we could afford to live that had like a school that we wanted to go to. We looked at, of course, San Francisco. We looked at LA or Southern California, and we just couldn't. We couldn't afford those areas. So Sacramento was where it was at. So we saved our money for a year and then drove out. And I've been here for 24 years.
So I'm sure everybody's dying to know, but do you have any pet?
Yeah. I have two dogs. I love dogs. I have a giant golden retriever. His name is Pilot. He's over 100 pounds. He's huge.
Oh my gosh.
And then I know he's so big. He was the biggest in a litter of 10 puppies. And then we have Olive, who is a tiny 10-pound white fluffy dog. She's a Catone de Tuliar, which nobody has ever heard of that breed. I had never heard of the breed, but she doesn't shed, and she's just a little doll. And she, like I said, she's 10 pounds. So we've got this huge dog and this tiny dog, and they're my kids. I could not love them more. They're
Your
my
fur
first.
babies. They're
Yeah.
your fur babies. Okay, I'm looking at the list and I'm pretty sure that we've gone through everything. So
Wow.
I have one question that's not on the list.
Okay.
And I thought of this just before we went on here. Considering your last name, when you play the game, do you choose truth or do you choose dare?
I haven't played Truth or Dare in a long time. I think it depends on who's asking the question, whether or not I'm going to want to answer it. Yeah, I do like a good dare for sure. I'll also tell the truth. Like, I'm pretty honest. If I get a direct question, I will likely answer it honestly. I'd say it's 50-50. Yeah.
Was there anything that we didn't discuss that you want your listeners to know about you?
Yes, actually. Had many commenters on TikTok ask how I can consider myself child-free when I have three stepchildren. And I think it's interesting. Some people are vehement that I cannot call myself child-free. If I'm a stepmom, I cannot call myself child-free. And then there's other people that defend my right to call myself child-free. And for me, what it boils down to is it's okay for me to honor both of those facets of myself. I did choose to be biologically child free. That is a choice I made. And I also did choose to be a stepmom. And so, but I don't think I have to I don't think one overrides the other. Just because I chose to be a stepmom doesn't negate the fact that I did choose to not have children of my own. And I think it's okay to honor both sides of that for me.
Mhm.
So yeah, people are still going to have issue with me saying I'm child free by choice when I have 3 step kids, but I think it's okay. I think it's okay to say, yes, I have 3 step girls, stepdaughters. I love them. They're important in my life, but I also did choose to not have children of my own. And it's okay to talk about that and call myself child free,
Mhm.
even though I have stepchildren. So yeah, I think that's the only thing that we didn't cover that I think I should warranted that I mentioned.
Yeah. Yeah, it's important. I think that people need to back off.
Yeah, 2 things can be true at once.
Mhm.
It's not black and white, it's not either or. 2 things can be true at once.
Yep,
So,
absolutely.
it's okay. Yeah.
Do you have ideas for the next season? Do you have like
Yeah, I'm currently working on, internalized misogyny. And then a woman messaged me, she's a doctor, and she said she has lots of stories of medical misogyny, so I reached out to her. Yeah, I reached out. She's child-free by choice in part because of the medical misogyny she has seen. So I'm like, oh, I definitely want to talk to you.
I've seen like some videos on that and like it's appalling. It's appalling.
I,
Mhm.
I have not dug into it yet, but I know I'm just going to be so irate by what I
Mhm.
find.
Mhm.
So those are the 2 that I have at top of mind right now. I had that whole master list of topics that I need to re-review and see what's sticking with me. I read I read a book recently. Actually, I just finished it called Journey of Souls. Did I tell you about this?
Mhm. Mhm.
Yeah. So I don't know if I want to go down that road or not. It's pretty esoteric. I'm not sure it's going to resonate, but it might. Most people, are curious about what happens after you die and if we have past lives. So I could do something on that topic. It fascinates me like to no end. So we'll see. I'm tossing that idea whether or not I want to
Yeah.
talk about that.
I mean, it is pretty fascinating. I actually have a theory on that. So you and I are going to chit chat
That's
about
right. You're gonna tell me in New York.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, I am out of questions. I hope I did my justice is as a host for you today.
Yes. We were off. Thank you. Yeah, thank you for asking me all the questions. And for the listeners, I hope you will stay tuned for season 2 coming in the near-ish future. So we'll see you then.
Check out callherdaring.com for all the information on that. You can always check in whenever you want and then also hang out on the site and see if there's anything on there that you like.
Yeah, check out
Mhm.
Bagnet Company.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Call Her Daring podcast. You can find me and Call Her Daring on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Follow for even more content and conversations about women being radically honest about the female experience. Please join me here every week for a new episode of Call Her Daring, and let's continue the powerful tradition of storytelling with the goal of informing and educating us all, so that we may step into our truest selves and realize our full potential as powerful women.